I would like to discuss about intimacy and what intimacy is. Intimacy requires availability, receptivity, and dharma. Sex, lovemaking, intercourse is very fulfilling. Think of your body like a gold chalice, and think of the water, right? The water as holy water. Sex is very much a connection we have with the Holy Spirit. Now, a lot of us, we don't see it like that because in our particular patriarchal paradigm, sex does not very much connect us with the Holy Spirit, right? Because our sex is very distorted, because it's very commotional, right? It's trauma. It's the transference of emotional upset or emotional agitation, or it's the transference of our closed hearts and the sort of irritability we have when we have a closed heart, right? So that just drains us more than actually elevates us, right? When we're very commotional, it's very draining sex. And in our sort of pornographic view of sex, particularly in the Western culture, it is very much draining, right? We create the heat, but then the heat doesn't go anywhere, right? So after you have sex, you just kind of lay there, and the heat that you've created through the sex, it doesn't really give you that immense healing, because there's a lot of commotion, there's a lot of it could even be lack of self-control, there can even be addictions involved or obsessions involved, or just emotions that are very high, very destructive emotions. There could be a lot of habits or behaviors that create a lot of conflict within the actual sex or the intercourse, such as anger and rage, right? A lot of pornographic sex, a lot of it in the men, there's a lot of anger, right? There's a lot of anger and rage that shows up as like domination, right? Dominating the woman. And there's a lot of, with the women in this pornographic sort of patriarchal paradigm, she's very submissive, meaning she's very oppressed. And she's very much a victim, right? A victim to the trauma that's inflicted on her, right? She's very much unexpressed. Her body is desensitized, right? So that kind of what we call intercourse is not fulfilling. And that's why a lot of men, they just keep going, masturbating to these pornographic images and getting their, release or ejaculation and still not satisfied. Because the intercourse, the sex, is actually meant to bring a deeper connection with the Holy Spirit and actually for healing, really. And when a lot of men, they don't get that healing, their nervous system starts to scratch, and they try to scratch it with ejaculation, right? And the same thing as women can have sex addictions as well, right? Where they're using the vibrators and eventually they numb out, meaning they desensitize that actual area to the point where when they do have intercourse with with men, they don't really feel anything. Their sensual body is very numb. It's desensitized. So we have a lot of numb people, right, having sex with numb people, and they're very unfulfilled in the act and intercourse because the heat they're creating is not going anywhere, right? The heat almost just kind of settles, it kind of sinks rather than it actually moves into, we call the higher chakras, right? So with many the practices we call the tantra practices, we talk about the red tantra, or the red orange tantra. We talk about the green tantra. We talk about the white tantra, and all of them can be experienced in sex, intercourse, or just experienced in your own meditation with your own orgasmic pranic force, right? Because we all have an orgasmic pranic force. It's called your creative lifeline, right? That's how you get things done. That's how you move the energy. That's how you create and destroy. So we talk about intercourse is meant to align all of the three that I've mentioned. We can talk about the red orange, right? Which is about the primal energy, right? The primal energy that's connected to the earth, right? It's connected to the ancestors, connected to the sort of the elemental realm, right? More connected to we call the earth element, right? So it's kind of about the stone, which is about the ancestors, right? The ancestors in centuries or thousands of years. And it also represents, we know, the fertility, right? The fertility. And then we talk about the aligning of the green Tara, which is about your emotions. It's associated with the element of water, right? The water and the turning of emotions and the experience of emotions, the healing and the release of emotions. And then we talk about the white Tantra, which is very much about the Holy Spirit. It's about the soul and the experience of what we call a soul union. And we don't see the alignment of any of these in the porn industry, right? All we see is just this agitation within the lower shot, the red. We just see this red energy, right? Which a lot of it is like anger or victim or rage, right? Or kind of dominating or submitting to the higher person, the Godhead, right? The authoritative figure, whoever that is, in the sexual encounter. It also works with trauma, right? It also works with our feelings of not being safe or not being comfortable, right? So we look at porn and it kind of plays out that sort of that dark red energy within us, which is, again, we all have that primal, that heat, that passion, that desire, that drive. But how it's dissatisfying for us, and why we keep trying to do it again and again and again, because it's not satisfying. So we're trying to figure out how to make it satisfying, because we do it once, we get the heat, and then it settles, and then it doesn't really create any sort of it doesn't really give us a sense of empowerment, right? Our sex doesn't give us a sense of empowerment. It kind of just gives us a sense of, after a while, when we're numb, this sense of boredom or this sense of disconnect with our own body, right? And the transference that we do with each other is a real thing. People don't realize that, or they do. But again, when you are going to sleep and you're starting to have insomnia, right, because of all these sexual transferences that you're having, and it can feel like a dump yard, right? Especially when you, in this individual, the sex is coming from an emotionally charged place, like meaning a negative emotionally charged place, or when it's coming to like a physically imbalanced place, right? Or when it's coming to, again, even very closed off intuitively, right? And the sort of a lot of people ignore their intuition, right? They have sex with people, their intuition is saying no, they should not be transferring their energy with or sharing their seed with, but they ignore, right? And then it creates blockages in the intuition, right? When we're sexually transferring energy, or a man giving his seed to women, that intuitively on a soul level, he's not meant to create that tie. He's not meant to create that sort of interlock of consciousness, because again, we do transfer our energy to these people, and we do our consciousness with their consciousness can connect. And when we're not in a healed place, right? When the sex is not, when it's not available, it's not receptive, and it's not of Dharma, we can basically just be transferring more of I call it like the waste, like low self-esteem, low self-worth, like I don't feel good about myself. We can transfer that back and forth each other all day long, and not ever move the energy, and not ever experience the transmutation of that. Because lovemaking is basically two people who love each other that really become available, receptive, and ignite their own dharma for this partnership, this relationship, for the purpose of sex to be actually transformative, to transmute these lower dense vibrations that are caught in the tantra, right? The red orange tantra, the green tantra, the white tantra, so that the person, when you clear out these sort of disruptions or distortions or these interferences that could come from childhood trauma or childhood fear, or childhood anger, a lot of it is childhood based, because that has the strongest magnetic effects on the sort of setup of our just human biology, as well as our psychomagnetic structure, and as well as our electromagnetic structure, is heavily influenced by the childhood, right? It sets us up. But sex is about, you're reinventing yourself, and they're reinventing themselves, right? And that's what makes it is ecstatic, because every sex experience should be about reinventing yourself. But we don't really look at it like that, right? When a man comes to a woman and they experience the love making, it should transform his ego, right? It should transform and kind of transmute these lower vibrational energies associated with ego, which can be like control and aggression, and can be about denial and victim mentality, right? It should transmute those lower vibrations, right? The love of the woman in intercourse with the man basically transforms his ego. It reinvents his ego, right? It heals his ego, right? And for a woman, the intercourse, right? It heals a woman's heart, right? It heals a woman's heart, right? So we talk about, women, when after they have sex, they're all like in love, right? They're in love, and many times, or they're not in love, right? Because when a man, when the sex is so healing for a woman's heart, it just gives out this immense love, right? And a lot of women, when they have had that experience, that very healing experience with a man who, and then afterwards kind of discredits that sexual experience and the sort of healing that took place for the woman, a lot of women can block off their heart and therefore have sex in the future with maybe another partner, and it's not the same, because their heart is very closed off. Because as women, once we really open up our heart in the sexual experience, and it's discredited right afterward by a man, and the immense healing that we've had, and it's discredited, or the man, right, we can say discredits it or disrespects that, right? It can be very detrimental to women's heart, because again, for women, like after sex, it's so tender, the heart. It's so tender, it's so soft, it's so open. And that's the time when men need to be very, very comforting and be very, very kind, right? But in a pornographic thing, you see in porn, a man just comes and then he just walks off and like leaves the scene, right? But that is not natural. That's not actually intimacy. But a lot of men are basically programmed by, again, all men have watched porn at some point or some time. It's just unfortunate, a lot of boys are watching porn at like age 7, right? Which really, really creates this major sort of disruption. A lot of these men also don't ever experience intimacy. They have intimacy issues as an older man, meaning they can't attract relationships that actually, they can't hold love in a relationship. They can't hold it because they don't feel they're deserving of it. They don't feel like they're good enough, and so on and so forth. So they're more inclined to be sabotaging and to create sort of conflicts, like just unnecessary conflicts, and are more inclined to basically walk away, run away from actual love connections because of that porn that was set up very young in that boy's psyche. So again, after sex, the intimacy, like, with a woman, is the experience of the closeness with a man, right? After the sex, because again, a woman's heart is so tender, it's so soft, like her heart energy is just explosive, right? It's just explosive, very, very explosive, right? I mean, the creative heat is also, wide open. But the heart is is very healing for a woman particularly, because as a woman, that's where we carry women, we have a electromagnetic field at the heart that is, I would say, 30 times stronger than a man. And men don't have electromagnetic field. They don't have, you can say, an arc line at the heart. They don't have that. So a lot of us as women, we vibrate stronger at the heart, right, than what men do, like 30 times, I would say, stronger than a man. And in that heart frequency, in that heart arc line, we carry the emotions of shame, not just for ourselves, for our ancestors, for the collective. Because as women, they say we're more emotional and emotional, emotional, commotional, right? And a lot of women, not so long ago, were literally put into basically insane asylums by their husbands for being emotional, right? Because men don't understand, because they don't have that emotional capacity. Now, women, I do believe the electromagnetic field, the arc line at the heart, actually has the same emotional capacity as like a killer whale. And according to research, the killer whales have a significant larger part of the brain for emotional capacity than human beings. And I do believe as women, in the sort of heart vibration is, I would say it's more in the emotional capacity of like a killer whale, right? And we know that the killer whales have a spirituality that is very, very profound in a way that we can understand as human beings, because the spirituality and the emotional capacity of the killer whales, it seems to be an evolved state of us. It's more advanced than us as human beings. It's significantly more evolved than us as human beings. The emotional spectrum, the spirituality of the whales and the killer whales is actually significantly more evolved than the human species. So it's very, very interesting, right? But us as women, and we actually have that. We can tap into that spirituality of we can say the killer whales. And with that, when we really open that up and really step into the spirituality of our heart as women, we heal a lot of shame, we heal a lot of rage, we heal a lot of victim and trauma that's held in the emotional spectrum. And as women, that's why a lot of us can get very, very agitated or triggered or commotional or upset, because a lot of us carry a lot of neglect, a lot of abandonment, a lot of just these sufferings when it comes to emotions. And sex can be very healing if it's with a man who is going to provide that for us, right? And it's not so much that he is aware of a woman's heart, right? It's more so that he is available, he's receptive, and he has an intention for dharma, right? Do we ever come to sex like when we're feeling it, right? We've been feeling it for hours before we actually come together, and we make an intention that we want to experience dharma with each other, right? Which is, I want to experience the great passion and joy and healing of being with somebody that I really love, right? A lot of us, porn sets up this image that we're meant to have sex with just all these people and like some sort of orgy, and when you connect with the auras of these women who have been in these porn videos, these women are very, very there's a lot of pain in these women who have done that, who have been in these porn videos and have had sex with all these different types of men in these different types of movies or whatever. These women, a lot of them have a lot of pain, especially in their emotional body, especially. And that's why a lot of women who have been in this porn stuff, a lot of them, they just solely function at the lower chakra. They don't even try to open up emotionally, because emotionally they are so upset by the men that they've invited in, and that discredited their emotions, basically just turned up the emotions on them as a woman. Because as a woman, we are always emotional in sex. We can't deny that, because sex, it will always expand our heart frequency as a woman. And if it's discredited by a man, again, we can close off as women. We can get very upset, right? The emotions turn up, but then they don't transform, and then they just, right? It just gets very, very, it becomes very upsetting to us, right? Because of the heart frequency is wants to be received by a man. And when a man discredits us, it's not received. And in the porn stuff, men are not receiving women. They're doing it's very much about self-importance, about selfishness, right? And you can see the energies of the people in porn. They're pulling at each other. I want my orgasm. No, I want my orgasm. I'm going to ejaculate. No, and it's just like they're pulling at each other's energies, right? There isn't really, and again, like I said, the women who have done that, who've been in that porn stuff and have, done that with multiple men in different sets or scenes or whatever, you can see them, a lot of them are emotionally immature, and it has stunned their emotional growth. It's stunned their emotional. So a lot of them, they could be 35, these women that have been porn, I've seen them, and they have the emotional sort of maturity of like a 18-year-old or like a 22-year-old, right? Because when you close off emotionally and when you experience that emotional upset through sex with a man, it really can stun your emotional growth, right? Because it confuses you as a woman. It confuses the matters of the heart. It confuses love. It confuses the self-love, right? And sex is not meant to be confusing. It's not meant to confuse you. It's not. And that's a lot of us. We don't want to actually mature to experience an actual love-making experience. We don't want to mature because in our society, it's all about now. Like the porn industry has set it up that literally in the videos, it's like some guy just walks into, I don't know, he just walks into like a house, like just a random house. And then there's just a girl right on the couch, just hi. And then he just walks to her, and then he just rips her clothes off, and then they just have sex. And that's what we've all set ourselves up. We've all set ourselves to kind of think that you don't need to prepare for sex. You don't need to be mature for sex. Just have it immediately. Just do it with whoever. Just walk into someone's house or whatever and just they want it. That sex is always available. Just do it with whoever. And that kind of setup has confused us. Because in having sex with whoever, we've created kids with whoever, right? And therefore, it becomes very, very burdensome, right? To right, not only to raise a child that with this individual that may be here, may not be here, right? That we may think we're meant to be with, may not think we're meant to be with. We're confused about it. But we also have to raise our own heart. We have to raise our own heart frequency, especially as a woman, because at the end of the day, it always goes back to the woman, right? Because the woman, we are meant to be 16 times stronger than men. It is set up like that for a reason, because our heart frequency carries the destiny of this planet and also carries the healing of the past. So if we never heal as women because we're confused, because, we have participated in a man's ego, selfishness, or self-importance, right? And we've played that out with him and we've been discredited, right? We've never actually experienced healing in love or healing in lovemaking, or experienced the reinvention of ourselves in lovemaking. You bet. That's just going to create a burden for us. And having kids in that situation, it's just going to create a burden. We're not going to be able to mature as a woman, right? And therefore, the child is basically just going to be the child we have. It's basically just going to it's going to the child's development is heavily influenced by a mother's emotional maturity. right? Like a child self concept, right, is heavily influenced by the mother's emotional maturity. But when we are like emotional mess or emotionally confused because we again were in these kind of connections with men that again it's not based off of availability, receptivity, or dharma, but based off of whatever kind of, again, like codependency, loneliness, obsession, or feeling of not being good enough, right? That creates emotional stun on us as women, right? We can even, some women go emotionally backwards where they start to act like little girls, right? So, especially with a woman, right? A woman, again, we as women are changing the game when it comes to sex. The whole porn industry was created by men. We know this. This is not, something that's, hidden. We know the porn industry was hidden by sex. We know the porn industry, especially in Western culture, is basically easily accessible. It doesn't take much to find it, right? And it has basically kind of set up young boys and young girls to have this particular sexual experience that we as women, we are starting to basically deconstruct these pornographic whatever setups that actually are not very satisfying for men. Like I said, a lot of men who have that kind of setup, a lot of them have difficulties in being in a relationship, actually. I'm talking about not a kiddie relationship, like a little girl type of thing, where she's just like, like giddy and just like, it completely like desensitized or just completely just not stepping into her emotional maturity and her womanhood, right? We're talking about men in actual relationships with women who actually have emotional maturity, right? They're not just like little girls, just like, running around and creating these kinds of upsets or emotional commotions, right? We as women are in our relationships, like we might not be able to end this pornographic stuff, right? Because, sex trade has been something that will continue to go on and has gone on for thousands of years. But we can, in our personal relationships with men, we can invite in the knowledge of intimacy into our partnership with a man. Because I'm telling you, men want intimacy, right? It's just they don't think it's available, right? Or that's their programming. They think that there is no intimacy, that I just have to settle for like this type of sex that really is not satisfying me, because it's not playful, it's not intuitively led, it's not it's not coming from a place of wholeness, but a place of like sort of disconnect, or like you're withholding yourself, or you're hiding parts of yourself, you don't really love yourself, so you don't really want to give all of yourself to this person, right? So intimacy is very much about an individual being in their wholeness, coming to another who is in their wholeness, right? And this sort of teaching is not, you're not going to find it in the porn industry. You're not going to find it at the little porn stores that you'll see all the time if you're driving through the South, right? They're called adult stores, right? That you'll see all the time just driving through, southern states, right? and you're not going to find it there. Men, women are not going to find it there. And that's why we talk about men, they just look bored, especially in a lot of men I've seen in like, the southern states, because I'm from Tennessee. A lot of them look bored, and they have wives, children, and these men look bored because the woman is not giving them the intimacy, right? Because she doesn't know what that is, right? Because it's generations of again, you could say even in Tennessee, it's a real heavy patriarchal paradigm where a lot of women literally have been programmed to just be submissive and just give it to him when he wants it, and just let him do what he wants to do. If he wants to, ejaculate on her, whatever, just put up with it, right? We as women, especially in this heavy patriarchal paradigm in the South, have been just taught to just put up with a man's nasty, whatever he wants to ejaculate and do all this stuff to us, right? Just put up with it. You're a woman. He's the man. You gotta just put up with it. And in doing so, we've become very numb as women, and men can sense that. And that's why men are bored, because they're like, this woman is numb. Like, yeah, she's getting her orgasm and I'm getting my ejaculation, but it's boring. She's numb. I'm numb. Right? She's no fire. There's no passion. She's not whole. Right? She doesn't love herself. And I could feel that as a man. I could feel like this woman doesn't love herself. I don't feel her heart and soul, because she hasn't even practiced that, right? The heart and soul is a practice. It's not just you pull it out of your ass one day and all of a sudden it comes. Your heart frequency is something you have to develop as a woman through emotional maturity that comes about through observation, through meditation, and through a woman being in a community with other women working on creativity. That's how the emotional body develops, right? And then therefore, when the emotional body is mature, women have a spiritual artistry, as I like to call, right? A spiritual artistry where she is supremely creative, and she's very intuitive, and she's very has a lot of self-knowledge. We call it, she becomes an old soul, and men know that. They look for an old soul in a woman, because the archetype of an old soul, the oracle, right, we see in like the Matrix movie, right, is usually a woman. I mean, it can be a man as well, but in the view of it in the ancient past, and where the oracle word comes from, it comes from a matriarchal society where women, I mean men as well, who have a more feminine energy, but more women have been called old souls, meaning they would prophesize, they would channel, they would predict, they would have knowledge on like remedies and healing, herbalism and healing rituals and all that kind of thing. They would be knowledgeable on that because they were taught by their ancestors, right? And therefore women would be basically they would be taught by mother, grandmother, a community of women, older women, middle-aged women, young women, that would basically, they would all be teaching each other how to make the most creative decision, right? And that's lacking in these southern states, and that's why women, they don't know what intimacy is. They just think it's to procreate and just, get a man's rocks off or something like that. But then men get their rocks off, they have a baby, but then the men are still bored. And that's why they're wandering around looking like for, something, because they're not fulfilled, they're not satisfied, right? That's why they got that wandering on, because they're not fulfilled, so satisfied, because it comes with the woman. When she has artistry, when she has creativity, when she has spirituality, when you could talk about when her heart frequency is very empowered, you bet that's the most captivating energy a man can find, right? That's the most captivating energy a man can find, right? It's the most captivating energy a man can find, a woman's heart frequency, because it makes her an old soul. It makes her, it gives her this nobility, right? We think women nobility is like, that they can give a man good sex, and that's what makes her the top of the line of women or whatever. But no, it's her heart frequency. It's the old soul that she is when she emotionally matures. Because when you emotionally mature as a woman or a man, you become this old soul. You become this sort of ancient being to earth, as well as this futurist to earth, right? Because the emotions represent intuition. And when you are emotionally immature, you lack intuition, right? When you lack intuition, you don't know how to move the energy. Your self-esteem probably is lower, right? And you don't know how the creative mind is underdeveloped, right? But when you are emotionally mature, your intuition is high. We talk about high priestess, right? We talk about empress in the traditional tarot, high priestess, empress, and that is, you are like an old soul. You are like a futurist as well. You're an old soul, but you're also a futurist. And that's a type of woman that men know that if they were to have love making with this type of woman, that he would be utterly transformed, and all, he would, a lot of these ego imbalances, right, would be transmuted, and a man would he would step more into his integrity and his truth, right? A lot of men, when they do the porn stuff, the porn sex, a lot of men, they're not stepped into their integrity, their truth. They don't get that experience, right? So with the change of sex, it is starting with us as women. As we come together in our communities again with other women, we start to prepare ourselves, right? We start to take back our sex power and not just use it for these men who have no idea what they're doing. They say they know what they're doing, have had sex with multiple people and are 35, 45, but still have no idea what they're doing because they're dissatisfied. That's why they're just, doing whatever. And really taking back our power and really coming together with other women to really nourish ourselves with creativity, with emotional maturity, with intuitive practices, right? That make us feel like the high priestess, make us feel like the empress, so that when we do come together with a man through intercourse, right? And we as women, we have this spiritual leadership. And that's kind of what's missing with, women in the South and, the patriarchal paradigm is there's no sense of spiritual leadership in sex, right? It's just, I put up with it. He just does whatever he wants to do. And then it gets boring. And then he invites in other women or whatever the dilemma is, right? There's always that kind of dilemma. Like, he's bored. He invites in other people. What's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want to da-da-da? Right? And then you just put up with it because, we're taught as women, you just put up with it. And or you hate them, but you don't say it. You just do it on the down low, right? Right? So a lot of us as women, we are taking back our power, and we're starting to, instead of using our power, going out there just thinking, I'm just here to procreate and just have kids with some random dude that I'm not really sure is my match. A lot of us women are raising our vibration through being in a community with women, or, focusing on creativity as a woman, right? Focusing on creativity, focusing on spirituality, focusing on artistry, right? What that means, right? To be a household Mandela as a woman, because the frequency of the house is the woman, not the man. The man, he could be a stay-home dad. Still, the frequency of the house will be the woman. She could be at work 8 hours, 10 hours a day while the dad is staying home. The frequency of the house will be the woman, right? Because it's the house represents a portal. It represents a sort of a vortex of energy, and that vortex of energy is very much led by the feminine energy, right? By the feminine energy. She is the leader of dimensions, of realities. And a house is very much like a doorway or portal to other dimensions, other realities, right? And it's a feminine energy that is the key that kind of opens up the door into these other realities and dimensions of self. So the household Mandela is what we are really working on as women in our own practices, just with ourselves as single maidens, right? And that's how it was in the ancient past, in the matriarchal society. There are matriarchal societies that are still happening today, but they're very small groups, right? It's not like a huge nation state. It's very small, like tribes. But in this matriarchal society, a lot of women in the maiden period, which was, basically a woman who's not married, a woman who is just coming of age, basically. A lot of these maidens would go to schools, and it would be called it would be like a matriarchal school on like femininity. And it's kind of what we call today as like an esoteric school. When we think of like people in India, like a lot of the noble kids, they go to esoteric schools, right? The kind of the wealthy children go to esoteric schools as well as traditional schools. They go to both, right? Because you can talk about like a wealthy lineage, right? Like wealthy people understand that you need to have both mind sovereignty, which is esoteric, but you also need traditional mind, programming, right? So that you can be aware of what's going on this planet, but also you can have the unlocking of the mind to know how to move through the energy, how to heal it, how to transform it, how to be prepared, right? How to have foresight, how to have intuition. So a lot of maidens in the matriarchal society thousands and thousands of years ago, particularly in ancient Egypt, a lot of maidens, again, coming of age girls, they would be going into school that would be like community of women. And they would be going into that for years, where literally there would be like elder women, like their aunts and their mothers, and like women that were in their family, like elder women, and they would be teachers, and these young women would basically be taught about spirituality, about divinity. They'd be taught about the body and the biology and the energy flow and their energy movement and the whole energy system. They would be taught about relationships. They would be taught about emotions. They would be taught about, basically, they would be given wisdom from multiple generations of women who have seen and experienced many things, and they would share it with these young maidens to help them, so that when they did become mothers, they would carry on that lineage of wisdom from mother to grandmother, great-grandmother, to all the aunts and all of the women in the tribe, right? And that's what intimacy is, right? It really starts with a maiden having intimacy with her women, her aunt, her mother, her great grandmother, and the tribe. It's just unfortunate we don't really have that sort of wisdom in the lineage anymore, right? Because a lot of old soul, futurist, visionary, creative, all of these kind of practices and these ceremonious talents, a lot of it was deconstructed and almost obliterated by the patriarchal paradigm, right? It was. Even all of that has been completely deconstructed. So now the lineage, a lot of even women, they're like, I can't get anything from my mother. My mother has no wisdom. My grandmother definitely has no wisdom, right? Depends on where you live geographically, but it's just simply because a lot of the womanhood has been so deconstructed that it's like, there's almost like, it's bankrupt, right? It's almost like you go in there and there's just like nothing there. It's like all been ripped. It's all been like just destroyed. Think of it like a museum, right? There's a museum in like the Middle East where there's just these ancient sort of Mesopotamian like sculptures, and men come in and they just tear it up. They destroy everything. That's kind of what happened in to women. A lot of men, who are very ego imbalanced, they came into a woman's household Mandela. They basically just destroyed everything, all the artifacts, all the scrolls, all the books, everything. They just ripped it up, burned it up, destroyed it all, right? And now when you go into this empty museum where there once was a lot of sculptures and artifacts and just ancient sort of even maybe even ancient cuneiform from Mesopotamia, it's just an empty museum. It's just empty. There's nothing there. All there is just a little like a sculpture of a body with like a missing head. And you're like, what is that? Like, I don't know what is that supposed to mean? We don't know. So a lot of us as women, we're like, I don't know. I don't know what it means to be a woman. I don't know what it means to be a mother, right? And that's why a lot of us as women are struggling. We struggle to raise our kids. We struggle to have the wisdom we struggle to emotionally mature as a woman, because we don't have that sort of lineage of women, right? Of that sort of old soul and that futurist. And a lot of us are basically we are resurrecting that as a woman, because we understand that, again, the emotional, the child's self-concept is based on the woman's emotional maturity, right? So if she is emotionally poor and like immature and like mad and upset, you bet the child's self-concept is just going to be that. And he or she is just going to react and respond to that by basically doing what the mother wants to do, right? So if she's emotionally upset, basically the child will just basically act out what the mother is acting out inside herself, right? So the child will, like I said, will act out what's going on inside the mother in her emotional reality, right? Because again, when a woman doesn't have that emotional like maturity, she's not very fulfilled as a woman. And a child can sense that when a woman's not fulfilled. She's not fulfilling she's not fulfilling her destiny as a woman, right? When we think of the destiny of a woman in the ancient matriarchal society, is basically about a woman being of an old soul, having the futurist mind, right? Having a fully developed intuition, having a creative mind, right? We talk about becoming the high priestess, the empress, right? Becoming a spiritual leader. That is the fulfillment of a woman, becoming a spiritual leader, right? And again, like I said, all of that has been deconstructed. Once the patriarchs came in and said, we're the new leaders, a lot of that was just deconstructed, brutally deconstructed, aggressively deconstructed, right? And a lot of us women we were derobed, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, we were derobed, stoned, right? They cut our hair, because with long hair that is never cut really represents, spiritually, it represents the flow, right? The flow of psychic energy that is very deep. It was cut, right? Our hair was cut, right? Our identity as a woman was deconstructed and reformed into image of a woman is a man's claim, right? So with men, right? With men and connecting with men and in having that intimacy, men who want to spiritually grow, right? Because not every man wants to spiritually grow, right? Really experience his victory, right? His spiritual victory. Because again, it could be various reasons. But there are many men on this planet, many men who do want to experience their integrity and their truth, right? Because they know that that's going to make them more abundant, creative, and it's really going to expand their life and give them just this great sense of discovery and mastery as a man that is definitely brought about from the woman. And with the sex, right? The lovemaking the man wants, right? Men want it with a woman. We're understanding that as women, lovemaking with a man, if it's not available, if it's not receptive, and it's not based on a dharma, we're not just gonna just do it right? Just because, right? So a lot of us as women, again, this is very challenged. This is very, very challenged right now on the planet, because the powers that were, or whatever groups of, higher ups, they don't want us to function in this sort of way as women, right? Because as long as we're just, tangled up with the wrong people, having kids with whoever or whatever, that kind of thing, confused and tired and worn down and emotionally mature as women, we'll never really be able to spiritually lead and create major transformation within the collective and within the generations to come, right? It's like I said, the children, they're led by the mother, right? They love the father, right? They love the father, but they are spiritually led by the mother. They are led spiritually by the mother, right? And lovemaking is an ultimate experience for both a man and a woman. It's very fulfilling. And men since there's been such widespread numbness and such dissatisfaction, and this porn stuff is not working for a lot of men because it's not helping them with relationships, it's not helping them to really spiritually grow, and it kind of creates these sort of setbacks and these kind of negativities a lot of times, or this immaturity for men. A lot of men are beginning to realize, like, yeah, I would like a more soulful connection with a woman, right? And again, some men will never, because they just be selfish and self-important until they die. But a lot of men are wanting that soulful connection with a woman, because a lot of men, they do want to experience their victory, right? Their victory as a man, right? And a victory of a man is very much about how he loves a woman, right? When you see men who hate women, that's not a man of victory. That's a cowardly man. That's a weak man. That's a broken man. A man who's like hates women and like women are like they're this, that, and the other, and like want to destroy women. That is a man that is broke. That is not a real man. That is not a man at all. That's something else, right? And basically, a man becomes a man through the love of a woman. That's how he really becomes a mature man. And before that, he's more of like at a threshold of like boy meets man, but not a man, but becoming a man. When a man has love for a woman, and that love, that woman basically resurrects or brings him his integrity and his truth through whatever way that it could do, just to her, that makes him a man, right? It brings him out of the boyish, selfishness, self-importance, my ego, and all of those imbalances, and really brings him into a man with spiritual depth, right? And there are many pathways a man can, obtain this spiritual depth. It's not just through like sex or with a woman. It could also be through the mother. It could be even through the sister. It could just be through a feminine energy the man basically entrances himself with, right? That, gives him the spiritual depth of this as a man. And then in return, he has this integrity, and he has this, he has integrity, he has infinity, and he also has his truth, right? Which becomes very, very defined, very, very clear, and very, very empowered, right, as a man. And that is brought about from the love he has for a woman. And really, it's this kind of love connection, like I said, it's that really ignites this depth of spirituality within a man. And he doesn't even need to even think spiritually or whatever, be spiritual, quote unquote, right? Is a woman who has this emotional maturity to her. She has this curative aura through her, you can say, her spiritual leadership that was brought about through old soul, right? Connecting with the ancestors, and new soul connecting with the future, right? That in lovemaking, that sort of energy, that power energy that a woman radiates, connecting with that, right? When a man kind of comes in and plays with that, it's so fulfilling, right? It's so fulfilling, right? We talk about lovemaking, right? Lovemaking is, we call about union, two souls becoming one. But two souls don't become one when they're not healed. So a lot of times there's like healing that has to take place within sex before the sex can really evolve to, two becoming one. Because as long as you are emotionally like fear, you have fear, or you have trauma in your lower chakras, or you're blocked intuitively, you're never gonna really experience that union, right, with your partner. So sex is very much a practice of becoming more intuitive, healing your heart, your emotions, and as well as like unblocking your lower chakras, which is like your creative energy, your sexual energy, your sensual energy, right? And a lot of people, they never do that. They've had sex with somebody for 20 years and they're still blocked intuitively. And they're still harboring this sexual, like this blocked sexual energy in the lower chakra, right? Or they have had sex with somebody and they're just emotionally blocked. And therefore the flow of energy is not as rhythmic and not as playful, because you can't really play with somebody when you're not available, you're not receptive, you're not in the Dharma, which is to be intentional, to think of magic and possibility and manifestation, right? To be authentic and to be natural with somebody. And it's very hard for us to be natural when we're blocked intuitively and blocked emotionally and blocked sexually, right? It's very, very hard for us to be natural and to be expressive and to be authentic and to be playful and kindred and to step into our innocence with somebody, right? Talk about like love for the first time, right? When we're, when the physical body is carrying these disruptions. So we have to clear out the disruptions. And that's why we do it within our own practice as individuals, right? So that we can come into their wholeness as individuals. So that when we do kind of connect in the physical, we are connecting, we're connecting our healing. We don't want to be connecting our commotions and distortions and disruptions with each other. We want to connect our healing, because we want to have a bigger experience in sex of our healing. That's what sex is. We want a bigger experience of our healing. And healing is passion. It's I love you. It's expressive. It's playful. It's kindred. It's soulful. It's empowering. But when I'm distorted, my partner's distorted in ways that I'm blocked intuitively, and I have low self-esteem, and I harboring a lot of emotional grief from past relationships, all that relationship is really going to do is trigger that within me, awaken it, activate it, and then I'm going to pull back from the love or the love making, because I'm going to have to work on all of that, right? So when we work on it within ourselves to trigger ourselves, because we can trigger ourselves as women and men. We don't need to have sex to be triggered in our sexual blocks or whatever it is, right? And to become aware of these places in us that are divided, or places that we don't love, or places that we call broken, or places in us that are unhealed. We can just do it through being in nature and just touching ourselves, not like touching like our area, but just touching our shoulders, our face, our heart, our thighs, just feeling on ourselves and just feeling ourselves from a central place, and then just feeling on ourselves and sending ourselves this immense Holy Spirit energy, right? Sex gives you the Holy Spirit. It always does. But we can create the Holy Spirit just in our meditation, right? That Holy Spirit, which is called our innocence, right? Our childlike self, our authenticity, right? The Holy Spirit stores our destiny. It stores our intuition. It stores our creativity. It stores our healing, right? The Holy Spirit is untouched by the matrix of this world. The Holy Spirit is untouched. The Holy Spirit moves through the matrix, but the matrix can never get to the Holy Spirit, right? We talk about the matrix can get to us and create all these distortions and make us hate ourselves and all these kinds of things. But the Holy Spirit is untouched. The matrix can never penetrate the Holy Spirit, never penetrate the Holy Spirit. And we can access the Holy Spirit and retrieve our soul, retrieve our healing, our authenticity, retrieve our courage, our faith, can retrieve the honorable God that's of unconditional love and forgiveness. And we can also retrieve empowerment from the Holy Spirit. And we can do it through our meditation, but when we do have sex with someone that we really love, right, that just brings in a whole nother level. It just really amplifies the play, the magic, the mystery, the discovery, and the trance that is the Holy Spirit. Because when you do have sex with someone, it is like you're in a trance. Like you're in a trance with them, you're in a trance with yourself, right? Time becomes timeless. You really open up we could say to the Holy Spirit, right? And you really start to experience your soul, right? You're almost like you start to feel you're untouched by this world, right? Like untouched by the childhood trauma and the society attack and all the aggressions and the shame and the belittlement, all the things that try to like bring us down and sink us into sinkholes where we don't belong. It's like in that lovemaking, it's like all of that just is stripped from you, and you just become this basic, real human being. Like you become like more of your soul, right? And that's what I call union, where you experience your infinity, you experience the soul, you experience the matrix breaks down, time breaks down, this life breaks down, and you get to connect with this gracious, compassionate, and sincere energy inside you. And a lot of people never experience that, right? And a lot of people never experience that, right? Because to experience that is to, as a woman, to emotionally mature, and as a man is to become a man, right? And men who are not men, that usually they hate women, or they have some sort of weird stuff with women, right? They hate them, they don't like them, they distrust them, or whatever it is. That's a boy, right? When a man loves a woman, he becomes a man. So he can have all the $1 billion of the world, but if he doesn't have respect for a woman, or if he does not have love for a woman, and he doesn't have that spiritual depth, right? And when a woman doesn't emotionally mature, right, because her trauma is holding her back, low self-esteem, the shame is holding her back, she doesn't ever emotionally mature, right, where she becomes fully self-responsible and sovereign, and has a strong creative mind and very, very powerful intuition. Love, that kind of love making is, she can't become that sort of offering is she can't receive, and he can't receive, right? So I just wanted to share this with you guys on the intimacy and trying to describe this, right? Articulate this power of intimacy and how it does transform our lives and brings us great healing and great intuitive expansion, and also brings us a great it elevates us. It's actually, sex is meant to make us more mature, not less, right? But the reason that we all are foolish with it, and we're all kind of all like upset by it, right? We're all upset. Women are upset because men this, and men are upset because women this, is because a lot of us are coming from the pornographic view of sex, which is actually more of a distortion to really hold us back as a human being, so that, we never really step into our maturity, right? And therefore begin to create major, create just major prosperity for us, right? Because we're held down by these, this sex that really keeps us confused. And a lot of us are, we need to love ourselves, right? We need to love ourselves to really open up our energy to our vision, our intention, right? Our seed of light, what it is that we came to this earth to realize and to manifest and to create. And a lot of us, sex is just simply, it represents the coming together with life, coming together with nature. It represents the desire for unity, right? It represents the desire for wholeness. And that's why a lot of us, everybody in this world is so fascinated, because everyone in this world wants wholeness. But to really, to prepare for that, we really do have to come into our healing, know what it is to be a healer, know what it is to be healed, know what it is to have this flow of healing moving through our chalice, right? To see yourself as a gold chalice, right? To see this kind of water, this pure water moving through us, right? To learn about ourselves, to become observant, to become intuitive, psychic, to become accepting of ourselves, and to really become to ignite this sense of mastery, this sense of fearlessness, this sense of willingness to learn and to grow through our relationships, so that we can move more closer to our soul and become more of our soul. And that really does take us as a man and a woman, right? As a woman, emotionally maturing to have this sense of spiritual leadership, and a man respecting woman so that he can have this spiritual depth. And that is what really expands us to be able to release, to purge, to shed, and to take in the soul, and to become a person who is prosperous, creative, and connected together with their tribe. And I think that's what it is to be with your soul, is like to be together with your tribe, because all of us feel separated and divided and confused, and I don't fit in with my family and It's like to come together with your tribe. But it's like the key to that is the soul, the intuition, the inner child, the healing, to come together with our soul for the purpose of being nourished and being fulfilled and feeling complete in the togetherness with the tribe, the togetherness with ourself, with our love, and to the togetherness with this earth, and the sense of clarity on this earth, the sense of like fearlessness, and the sense of protection, and the sense of knowing your infinity, knowing all of who you are, the past lives, the future lives, the you on the other planet's lives. And that brings about the sense of this discovery, and this great magic, and this great just amazement